guys.
Hi.
Oh, your video.
Oh, are you not video?
No. You do not want to see this mess.
Okay, fine.
It makes it easier if you want to just do audio. But we're happy to look at your lovely face as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amy.
And I'm Jaime. And this is Clever. Today we've got badass interior designer Ghislaine Viñas. Born in the Netherlands and raised in South Africa, Ghislaine made her way to the US and studied interior design at Philadelphia University. In 1999, she established her design firm in New York City and is designing everything from offices to coffee shops to lofts and even yachts. And this lady is not afraid of color.
No, she's not afraid of a lot of things. She's also won numerous design awards, including Interior Design's Best of the Year award several times over. She's designed a line of wallpaper for Flavor Paper, a line of furniture for Lol Designs, and been featured in a cajillion magazines, including Vogue, Elle Decor, Interior Design Magazine, Frame, and the New York Times.
Also a mom of two and respected and admired by all who know her and work with her. Plus, she knows how to have fun with her work. You'll hear all about it right now.
My name is Ghislaine Viñas. I'm an interior designer and product designer, and I work out of New York City.
And why did you become a designer?
I think that, I'm not sure why. I just always think it was a sort of part of me. I think design has always been a part of what I wanted to do, even before I knew what design was, because I would sort of get so excited by, opening a box of crayons and seeing all the colors. And I just got this incredible excitement from that. So in a way, I wanted to figure out how I could take that incredible excitement and do something with it. I suppose that led me to interior design.
I learned that you grew up in apartheid South Africa. That sounds like a very intense childhood. Can you tell us about that, what it looked like, how it felt, and how it shaped you?
It's actually quite the opposite of that, believe it or not. Growing up as a white person in South Africa in the 80s, our societies were completely segregated. I lived in, just like every other white person did, lived in a very white neighborhood, white community, and it was just the way that it was. You didn't think too much about it. That was just it. When I became older, it became more apparent what was going on, and you started being more conscious of the situation. Really moving out of South Africa, when you heard the news and you weren't in it anymore, is really when it became very apparent to you what was going on. So I think that's an experience for many white people growing up there at the time that I did, being a teenager there, a kid and then a teenager and figuring it out. So now I look back in total disbelief that was how we lived. It's just crazy. We would go to stores where only white people were allowed, or black people, or Indians, or whatever, or, buses were segregated, restaurants, everything. It was just a completely and utterly segregated environment. But, it was a little bit different too, because I'm not South African, and I think my family moved to South Africa. We lived there for 13 years. Mm-hmm. And so it was almost always a little bit like we were visiting. I always have that feeling that I have always been Dutch, and I have a very deep knowledge of South Africa and the South African people and that sort of thing. So I always kind of a little bit feel like a visitor, strangely, and I think that's also a bit different than actually being South African and being there. But that being said, apart from the apartheid situation, which is obviously huge, there were other elements of South African life that were incredible, and I feel unbelievably lucky to have grown up in such a beautiful country. It just was an extraordinary experience, and I feel very blessed to have had that, to have this incredible schooling and to have made the friends that I made, and to have that experience, I think is very special.
What is it that brought you and your family to South Africa to begin with?
My father is a civil engineer. He's not working anymore, but when he was a civil engineer, and his company moved him to South Africa. He was working on the engineering of a harbor in Richards Bay. It was a very strategic area, and a harbor would have been great in that area, but they couldn't figure out the engineering of it. So they hired a Dutch company to do the engineering. My father was one of the engineers on the project. So we were there on a 1-year contract. He was there on a 1-year contract, and then after that we moved back after a year, and then they had just fallen in love with South Africa, so they decided to move back independently, and my father started his own engineering business, and that's sort of how we ended up spending the next 13 years in South Africa until it got to a point where it was too dangerous and it wasn't safe anymore. It wasn't pleasant living there. It just, you were watching your back constantly, and then the economy was in a complete disaster. And, so I think at that point, my parents had decided that it was probably a good time to go back.
And by going back, that means going back to the Netherlands?
Yeah, going back to the Netherlands, where I had not spent any time at all. I think in the 80s, we didn't travel like we do now, where we just hop over to Europe for the weekend. So we didn't travel, we didn't go back and forth to the Netherlands too much. And my family used to come, my grandmother and aunts and whatever, they used to come visit us in South Africa, but hadn't spent a tremendous amount of time in the Netherlands. And coming from South Africa, this big, glorious country where you just so much freedom and nature around you, and we would go to the beach and get on a boat, and there was just like an amazing lifestyle we had. And then we moved back to the Netherlands, and everything was so small, and it was a complete culture shock for me, I have to say. And I had just turned 18 when we moved over there. I was very happy in South Africa, madly in love with a boy. Aww. And it was actually a really difficult time for my entire family, for my parents, for my siblings. Certainly wasn't what we wanted to be doing. We were very happy in South Africa, but my parents knew that it was time for something, for a change. So yeah, not the best time of my life, And so I get to the Netherlands, and I'm like, oh my God, what now? Like, honestly, I had no idea what I was going to do, because I was going to take a year off after high school. My friends and I had decided we would go on some adventures. I was probably going to travel. I had thought about going to Israel to go and, spend some time on a kibbutz just for the experience of it. And then all of a sudden we were all going back to Holland, and there we were. And, it was very difficult. And in many ways, the boyfriend that I had, sort of saved me, because he said, you've got to come to America. You'd love it. It's going to be amazing. He was very good at taking care of me. And, he sort of had that. He was very nurturing in that way. And so he helped me set that up. He ended up spending the summer with me, and then I ended up going back to America and had, enrolled in the school, this very small school. And there were only 200 students at the school. So it was very, very small.
How much time did you end up spending in Holland between South Africa and moving to America?
Only 9 months.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to study. I wanted to do something, but I was very lost at that point.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, having lived in South Africa, the Netherlands, and now the United States, but never really, I guess, directly putting roots down anywhere in the beginning, did you feel displaced, or did you ever feel a struggle between different cultures? Or how did you find your cultural identity?
No, moving to America was sort of very comforting for me. I was meeting up with some of my South African friends who were going to the same school. I could speak English again. I could very easily identify with American people. In a way, it was like coming home. The culture was different, but it wasn't like Europe for me was really tough. It was really difficult. Even though, growing up, we spoke Dutch at home always. We ate European food. My parents are like super European, we never adopted South African cultures at home at all. We were living like a Dutch family in South Africa. We had plenty of South African friends, and we integrated into the culture. But, our home life was very Dutch. So I don't know, America was It was amazing to me. It was just, I loved everything about it. I loved that it was, I had been funneled into this tiny little world in the Netherlands, and now I was coming back out again, and I could always just see the opportunity here in America. I loved it.
So you studied in Philly, which is cool because I did too. But before we get to that, I wanted to know, when you moved with this boyfriend, did you move to Philadelphia or did you move to another city first?
We moved to a suburb of Philadelphia. So it was a town called Bernathen. It's a small town. It probably has 1,500 people in it, but it has a college in it. And so I moved there. But it was definitely sort of suburban. It was not city at all. I hadn't ever lived in a city up till now. I grew up in the suburbs. But after 2 years there, I transferred to Philadelphia College of Textile and Science, which is now called Philadelphia University. When I transferred was when I actually thought, okay, what am I doing? What am I going to major in? And then at that time, it became clear to me that interior design was what I wanted to go into, because I looked at schools in the area that I could study interior design at.
When you transferred there, was that like the first city that you lived in?
Well, I'd stayed in the town of Bernathen.
Oh, and commuted.
Yeah, I commuted because my parents had taken a financial blow coming from South Africa. So they sort of came back with not very much at all, went back to Holland with not very much at all. So, it was a stretch for them to pay for college, and they were just incredibly generous at putting me through college. And it was a huge expense for them at that point, as they were trying to rebuild their finances back up again. So they had said, they paid for my first 2 years in college and then said, well, if you transfer, then we'll pay for your college, but you need to figure out room and board, which was pretty tough because I didn't have a work permit, so I couldn't really work. I only had a school permit. So, I was an au pair for a year, and then I worked as an RA in a high school dormitory, and I just used to commute to school. So I didn't have that sort of college experience that everyone talks about. I was really commuting and sort of trying to just make enough money to get through and pay for my car and that sort of thing. So it was tough. But it was fine. It wasn't like, oh my God, that was the toughest time. I managed. It was just what I needed to do.
All right. So you moved to the United States with a boy, as we ladies sometimes do, but that boy is not your current husband. Your husband, actually, he and I share the same name, yet it is pronounced differently, correct?
That's right. He's Jaime and you're Jamie. Yeah.
How did you end up meeting him?
It seems like everything I did was I was chasing some boy around, but maybe that is true. But there was this Venezuelan boy that I really liked a lot, and a friend of mine, another Venezuelan friend, I have no idea how I was connected to so many Venezuelan people, but we were sitting out filling out green card lottery applications at my apartment, and then he left. And then he came back 2 seconds later and said, I'm going to this party. Do you want to come? And I was like, is so-and-so going to be there? And he goes, yeah, I think so. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm coming. So then I go to this party, and this guy that I really like a lot, he's clearly not very interested in me. And so I ended up at this party, and I didn't really know anybody. I was like, oh, great, here I am. Anyway, so then I started talking to Jaime, who was, I don't know, in a group of people. And it turned out that we worked a block away from each other. I worked on 19th Street and he worked on 20th and 5th Avenue. So I don't know, we just kind of talked, and that was a Sunday, and he was supposed to be at that party with a girl he was dating at the time, but he had shown up to the party a day earlier thinking the party was on Saturday, and then it wasn't, and he showed up the next day and the girlfriend couldn't come. So he was there, and he tells the story like he saw a halo over my head, and he tells the whole like his love story is much more romantic than mine. I did spend, as he tried to like date me, I spent a lot of time trying to break up with him and giving him reasons why we should not date. And I was trying to fight it. And I remember my sister saying, what the hell is wrong with you? This guy's so nice. He's so nice to you. You just stop fighting it. And, it's not like that love story that everybody has, but we're so strong, and he is amazing, and I love him to bits. And, we make a really good team. He's amazing. He's an amazing, amazing, amazing man. And I'm very lucky to have married him.
And sometimes you work with him too. Doesn't he do photography?
He does photography, but he's a graphic designer.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So I can tell you that the reason why I've been able to develop my career is really because when I met him, I was working sales, design sales. I was like, I don't know where my career is going. And he has always seen something in me that I didn't see. And he's always like been incredibly encouraging. And he just saw something that I was like, he was like kind of like the first guy that really told me that I had something special. And based on that, I sort of was like, oh, wow, really? Oh, let me check this out. Let me see what this is about. And so he helped me with my portfolio in the beginning and getting that organized. And I mean, just the most amazing, supportive man that you can imagine, and very, very kind. And so he's super talented. And so, you know, we've always kind of leaned on each other as far as aesthetics goes or decisions, or we've always maintained separate companies. But when I started doing product design, or a long time ago when I was doing any kind of design work for rugs or anything, he would always help me with the graphics, and he's always done my website. He does a lot of photography, and every single project that needs anything, you know, graphically designed or anything, he's always the person behind that. You know, we now have done a couple of wallpapers together.
Oh, are you referring to the flavor paper?
Yes, it's really been fun working with John Sherman at Flavor Paper and the gang there.
Yeah, he's great.
Oh, so nice. So nice. Like, and I think that's sort of been a big part of my story, you know, just working with people where it just feels right, and you don't have to try too hard. I mean, obviously we work really hard, but the whole relationship thing, you know, it's just so, you just know when it clicks and when it works. And working with Flavor Paper has been one of those experiences for us.
You mentioned you did design sales for a while, and I think I read or heard somewhere that you said you were really good at it. And I would love to know how you kind of transitioned from working for someone else and selling to actually designing and starting your own firm.
When I just got out of school, I graduated from Philadelphia and I moved straight to New York because a bunch of my friends living in New York, and they said, we've got a big loft, come and move in here with us. So I did. So I'm pounding the pavement in the early 90s, like 1990. There is not a job anywhere. I mean, major recession. I could not land a job. I get out of the wrong subway stop, and there's a store, a beautiful like furniture store, and I go in and I ask them if they have any openings, and I end up getting a job at a company called Techline. And so you had to sort of use this modular furniture system, and we had to, you know, work in the showroom a couple of days, pick up sales, then go and do field measures, or sometimes we would work on bigger projects like hospitals or big offices. You'd have to draw out the layouts and then sell it as well. You'd have to figure out how much it was going to cost. You'd have to tweak design or whatever. So you're sort of little machine on your own, working within the company, and, you know, it was commission based. I figured out very, very quickly what questions to ask. I figured out very quickly how to be on equal footing with the client. And, you know, I sort of compared it a lot to dating. Like, you don't want to be desperate. You don't want them to be desperate. Like, how's this just going to feel good? So I would just ask questions. So how did you feel about this? Like, do you think you want to take this further? What's your process on making this decision, whether you want to go ahead or not? You know, pretty simple questions, but I would sort of gather that information and then focus my attention on deals that I thought I could close and leave the other ones alone. I don't know. I just figured it out how New Yorkers work. It just came quite naturally to me. And I had no idea that I could do this. But yeah, I was pretty successful, and it was a franchise. And I found out after a couple of years that I was actually the top salesperson in the US.
Wow. That's awesome.
But my bosses never told me that. I only found out going to like some kind of convention, and they were like, oh, yeah, you have pretty good sales. I was like, oh, really? Yeah, you know, so that was sort of surprising. Yeah, I mean, I love that experience. You know, I like to push myself. I don't care about competition. I don't care what other people are doing, but I like to push myself. And this commission thing was amazing.
Yeah, it's very motivating.
Oh my God, it was amazing. I loved it.
Yeah, I sold furniture through college at a couple of different furniture stores, and It's very motivating. And you do learn a whole lot about how people work and about helping them with their space and design. But it sounds like you were really doing a lot more hands-on design work like an interior designer would do for a client.
I think maybe more like a draftsperson. I'm not sure what it was, because my sales skills were pretty good at that point. But my whole experience of being a designer was terrible. I mean, I had no confidence in the world of design at that point. I've never stepped into a design office or worked a day for another designer. I wasn't practicing CAD. I had no idea. I was really getting left behind as far as technology was concerned and being able to keep up in an office, So I kept doing that job knowing that I was missing out on the design experience, my creativity. There was no creativity in my job. So I became more and more intimidated with the idea that I would have to go out and find a job. So it was good and bad at that point.
And so what was that transition like when you were like, okay, I've had enough of this sales thing. I need to really bite the bullet and start my own thing?
So nothing in my life has ever gone that way. I've never sort of planned something and think, okay, my next step is this and this and this. Things just sort of happened to me. And what happened was, at the time, that one of my friends that I had met in Pennsylvania, one of my first friends that I had made, he had a friend in New York who was opening an office. And this was my friend, Chris Kerr. And he had said, Paige, a really good friend of mine does office design, and so you might want to speak to her because if you're opening the new office. And so he kind of thought that I would go in there and play some tech line in there or something. She understood it that I was an interior designer and was going to do my whole office. So I walked in there and I didn't know. I didn't know what the expectation was. So she said, okay, so you're a designer, we're looking for someone to design the office. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, I can do that.
So for somebody with no confidence, that sounds like a pretty fearless move.
No, I wouldn't say I didn't have any confidence. I was probably overconfident in many ways. A strange combination of that at that point. No, I've never been scared. I have no fear. I have absolutely no fear.
Where does that come from?
It's my parents. I'm sure it's my parents.
Okay.
I'm not scared of anything, really. I'm not. I'm always like, I can do that. Well, let me figure out a plan. And then I go to work thinking, and I can put things that usually means that I pull people together. And that's exactly what I did in this situation. Like, I wasn't going to tell anybody that I knew what I was doing. My first thing was like, oh my God, I got this job. I need help. So I did end up getting this job, and the job was amazing. It was 10,000 square feet of completely raw office space in the Starrett Lehigh building in New York City, which is this gigantic building. And it was just being developed at the time. And, Martha Stewart has her offices in there, or maybe not yet. She was moving in, and it was a big deal building. I got my friend Vincent Palestro on board. He was another architect that I worked with. And I said, I need your help. I'll go 50-50 with you, because I knew that I needed to split this 50-50, because I knew that I needed him to take some serious responsibility on this project. And I knew that was the only way I could do it. And so he helped me through the process. And then we had the contractor. We sort of said, listen, I've never done this before. I don't know anything. You got to help me. And so we just formed this team, and it was great. I loved working with Paige. Was incredible. She's the client, Paige West. And, right now we're working on my 11th project with her.
That turned out well.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one. That's a good one. I'm glad I didn't screw that first one up.
What do you think the key to not screwing it up was? Was that just being really transparent about, like, this is my first one, but I'm a great problem solver and I can do this?
I'm not sure I even knew that at the time. I think it was just, I don't know. It was just maybe common sense.
Yeah, well, I tend to trust people who exude a kind of confidence and common sense. So even if you were feeling like you didn't have the training in a design office, you probably were emanating this air of confidence and figure outitude that people tend to feel really relieved by, really comforted by.
Yeah, up to that point, I was sort of developing my aesthetic. I mean, I always knew, I always had a very, very strong aesthetic. I knew what I liked. I knew what I didn't like. was no doubt about that. Very seldom was I on the fence whether I liked something or not. And if I was on the fence about it, I could tell you very easily what aspects of it I liked and didn't like, and how I felt maybe that it could come together better. Or, I'm pretty confident in that way, but still so much to learn, because I had a very narrow idea of what modern design was. I had absolutely no appreciation for history of design or any of that. I was just kind of catching up with what was current, what was on the market, what was happening at that time, but was not coming from anywhere with a big back history of knowing what had come before. And maybe that was kind of good in a way, because I don't know, I was just sort of working in a very intuitive sort of way.
That was your first job working for yourself, right?
Mm-hmm. And I was still, during that time, I was still working full-time for the company as well.
Oh. Whoa.
Yeah. So, this was another kind of thing that happened, because I got this job and I said, listen, I've got this job. I cannot turn it down. It's amazing. And the good news is there's some tech line in it as well, so I can make that happen. They were like, well, just don't work during the day. And I was like, okay, that's impossible. I have to work during the day on it as well. And I think I was just as upfront as I could be with them, and they were really cool about it too. They were really nice and flexible with it. I think they probably knew that I was going to be moving on at some point. So, we made it work, and I worked hard. So it wasn't like, I was slacking off or anything like that. I was a very hard worker, and I would just taken this on. And then I got pregnant as well with our first child during that.
So you've got 2 jobs and you're pregnant.
Yeah, and I think that was, there was a perfect way for it to happen, because it was a perfect way, that's why I said I didn't make a decision, okay, now I'm going on my own. It sort of was, I had one project that I had completed. I knew that I could do this, and I knew it was something that I wanted to do. I knew that walking into somebody else's office was probably the most intimidating thing that I would ever have to do. And so then I had dodged that bullet, and I didn't have to do that. I could kind of figure it out on my own. So that was sort of the incentive to start my own business, I think, just because I was so scared of going anywhere to interview for a project.
So you are scared of something, working for someone else.
Yeah, I am. You know what? And there are plenty of other things I'm scared of. That was a biggie for me. Yeah.
Well, you've mentioned in other interviews that you love the freedom that having your own design firm allows. And I'm a person who enjoys working for myself as well. I had so many jobs, and I always was like, why am I so unhappy? And it was typically because I just didn't want to answer to anybody else, and I want to do my own thing. So what did you dislike about the idea of working for somebody else? And has that affected the way that you are as a boss now?
I'm very, very spontaneous. I'm a very spontaneous person. I don't like to think things through too much. I would get into situations, and then I've recently found this thing called FOMO, fear of missing out. Yeah. I'm like, oh my God, that is my life. Somebody actually has coined the term. That's amazing. I'm not like that anymore, but I still have a bit of that, a big part of it. I just did not want to miss out on anything. And work would really get in the way when I was dating a boy or something like that, and everybody's taking off to go to the beach that day, and I'd have to work. I'd be like, are you kidding me? This is crazy. Or things like that. That's been really difficult for me. I've always just sort of wanted to, I don't know, like kind of do my own thing. And I used to be okay with people telling me what to do, but I'm not so okay with that anymore. I'm not so good at, I'm very good at listening to clients. I definitely see my clients as my bosses in many ways. They dictate to a certain degree what they want the project to be. And I like to think that I listen to that, but I like being my own boss, and I like the freedom of it. I like the freedom of, going where I want, when I want. If somebody says, last minute, you want to go to Chicago to NeoCon, and I can go, yeah, actually I can. Okay, great. Or do you want to do this, or do you want to meet this weekend, take Friday off, or I need to do that. I love that about my life. I love that nobody can dictate, like just the idea that somebody says to me, you're allowed, 15 days off or something like that, just is like, just put me in jail already.
I don't think I've taken 15 days off, though, since I started being self-employed, because I like what I do so much.
Oh, I have. But who's counting? Do not count that days.
Well, you've got to have input for output, right?
Exactly. But then what I always say to my employees is, you get X amount of paid vacation days. But I always say, if you want to take more, talk to me. I have no problem with people taking days off or going places, or not at all. I think it's really, really important.
That's how they feed their inspiration and their cultural awareness and their excitement and energizement. Energy.
Energize
that word.
You can make up new words. It's good
I do that all the time.
But don't you feel like at the end of the day, as long as people are getting their work done in a timely manner, who cares?
Well, I think that as a boss, I think it's definitely changed how I am. I mean, office environment is so important to me. And I am so incredibly proud of the office environment that we have, that people, there's no backstabbing. My crew is amazing. They work hard. They take care of each other. They take care of me. It's a very, very, very nice work environment, and there's no shouting, there's no screaming, there's none of that diva stuff that happens in a lot of offices. I mean, I'm not always the easiest person to please because I'm picky, but I will never lose my temper or anything like that. So it's a very, very nice work environment, and we try and laugh as much as we can, and we have a lot of fun, and I don't take any of this so seriously that people are getting upset or anything like that. That's hugely important to me, and it's hugely important. We do reviews twice a year, and I'm always like, my questions are always like, what could you be doing here that would make you happier? Or is there anything that you're doing that you hate doing that we can switch out for something that you prefer? What do you wish you were doing more of? What do you wish you were doing less of? Because I really believe in happiness, and I think that I've been able to make things happen so that I can be happy. But I want people here to feel like they're in control of what the work that they're doing and how they work. And, that's a huge part of the way that I feel about work.
You've talked about your relationship with your husband. Relationships were a key part of your sales success, your relationship to your employees as a boss, and of course, your clients. And I'm wondering how you approach building and maintaining those relationships. You mentioned equal footing. And so I wonder if that's an aspect of your relationships with everyone, including your personal relationships.
I do think that in some relationships, you're going to be stronger in some ways, and you're going to stand back in other areas. I mean, there's a natural play that you kind of move forward or back depending on what you're feeling. But I feel like my best clients are the ones that firstly start off with just loving my work. The people who come to me and say, we love what you do. We get it. It's awesome. And then, they want to play. Basically, that's what it feels like to me. Like, oh, you want to play design? Let's go. Let's do this. Let's go. Let's do some off-roading. Anybody who gets it, we're going to have a great time. Those are like the most amazing relationships I have with my clients, where we can come up with narratives and we can tell stories and we can take aspects of their personal life and weave it into their interiors or in their offices or whatever we're doing. A huge part of my work is storytelling and getting to know my clients and who they are and what they mean. And that whole development of the project in the beginning is just getting to know them, figuring out the quirky things about them and making it into a story, and then creating an environment based on that. So that is like an initial rapport that I have with those clients, and it's got to be fun. There has to be a sense of humor in it. There has to be, I'm not one of those designers where we've got to take everything so seriously, and, that relationship has to be fun, and you have to like the people. They have to like you,
Well, and all of that translates into the space, I think, and how they feel about the space after it's done. And so if you've developed this relationship with these people and weaved their story and their personality into the space, what effect do you hope that has on them after you leave, after you are no longer involved in, it's not a work in progress, after it's a finished piece?
Right. So, I mean, there's always a definite transition when you have to let go. And it's always a little tricky because while you're working on the, whatever it is, the house or the office or the boat or whatever you're working on, while you're working with the contract or whatever, you spend so much time in there and it almost feels like yours. It's yours. As you're finishing up and you're doing the finishing detail, art goes in or whatever, you have to then ask your client, can you come in? You have to step back, you have to knock on the door again, and you're sort of handing over this project back to your clients again. And it's always a little bit strange to me, that transition. I'm working on a project right now and we're transitioning, we're just finishing up, and now I am going to be a guest in their house. Whereas before, I that was my house. I was creating for them. The most important thing for me is that they step into that house and they just feel good. Like the aesthetics of happiness, living in a space that just, you don't know why, you walk into it and you just feel good about it. It just makes you feel happy or calm, or it feels like home or whatever it is. And I also think that it's got to be sort of stress-free. So we spend a lot of time working with fabrics and materials and thinking through things that the clients will be able to, just keep. So you go back there in 4 years and it still looks good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've got to be able to maintain it because that happiness wears off pretty quickly if the space itself starts to become unmaintainable.
Yeah, or if you use a fabric that stains easily, and I don't know, there's a whole lot of things that can happen, but that's important.
Do you feel connected to each space, product, or project that you do sort of long after the file's closed and you're done?
No, I let go right away.
You let go right away?
Yeah, I can't believe I was still married to my husband because I had a very, if he doesn't show up for 3 days, I'm like, who? Jaime, who? What? No. So I move on very, very quickly. I'm not connected to spaces at all. When clients move and, they move somewhere else, I very seldom do I feel any kind of sadness at that space not existing anymore. Yeah, I'm not sentimental in that way at all.
Interesting. You're fearless as well. You're not full of fear or risk aversion. And I can see a lot of ways where that would be a really good thing. But has it ever gotten you into trouble?
I'm sure it has. I'm trying to think. Maybe it's sometimes like being so confident that this and this will look great together, and then somebody will say it just really won't, and then I'll go, no, I'm convinced, and then you get it, and you're like, gosh, that looks like crap. What was I thinking? Why did you let me do that? I'll say to somebody, and they were like, you were convinced that it looked. I was like, yeah, I was. You're right. I really thought it was going to look good, but you should have said something to me. I mean, yeah, it happens for sure.
But I think there's something cool about the fact that you can't even remember when fearlessness was a problem. Mostly it's just a good thing.
Yeah, it's very convenient not to remember things like that. I don't remember terrible things that happened in my life.
Really?
Yeah, I try to forget them. Sometimes people remind me about things. I'll be like, remember when you had that huge fight with so-and-so over the thing? And I was like, what? Did I? Oh my God, yeah. No, I don't. Oh, that's right. Oh my God, I totally forgot about that. Yeah. I try not to hold on to stuff like that. It's probably need some therapy or something.
Oh, I don't know. You sound sort of delightfully unencumbered. You're not carrying your baggage around with you everywhere.
Oh, and I do have baggage. I do have I do have issues. I'm a combination of being overconfident and insecure as well. I can think for days about something that I said and think, oh my God, why did I say that? I probably hurt that person's feelings, or I come off as being pretty confident, but if there's some negativity or something, I really will mull it over for days. And, as soon as it gets fixed or, then I'm like, oh, thank God that got resolved, but things like that really bother me a lot.
And is the discomfort chiefly in the prospect of perhaps hurting somebody's feelings? I mean, I know for me, I'm fearless when it comes to like doing certain projects or power tools or tough work, but I am terrified of hurting somebody else's feelings or the discomfort that arises from that.
This is maybe too much about me, but it's probably because I want to be liked. I want everybody to like me. And so if I do something where I might hurt somebody, I might think, oh, does that mean that they're not going to like me anymore? Or, and that's a huge insecurity, right? Like, if you're really secure, you don't give a shit if somebody likes you or doesn't like you. I think we're all mixtures of different things. And I mean, if you really know me, you know that you'll have plenty of times that you'll see questioning things or, saying, do you think that was the right thing to do? I'm not sure. I feel bad about this.
Just to let you know, word on the street is you are very well liked.
Oh,
so take that with you.
We like you.
I like you a lot.
Oh, thank you so much. That makes me feel so good. That's enough fuel for like 3 days. Am I pathetic enough to everybody?
No, it's not pathetic. What that is human.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about you being an entrepreneur, a mother, a wife, a designer, etc. You do quite a lot. You're a badass lady boss with all kinds of things on your plate, and you love freedom. How many kids do you have?
13.
No,
two girls.
Two girls.
I wanted to make it sound like I was really, accomplished in the mothering department. I have 2 daughters. One of them is about to turn 14. Her name is Saskia Luna. And my oldest daughter is almost 16, and her name is Mia Soleil.
Oh, pretty names.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we call them Saskia and Mia, but I love that their middle names are Sun and Moon.
So let's just talk about motherhood for a second. Amy and I had this discussion where we were wondering why we don't ask guy designers about being parents. But for some reason, there's something about, being a mother and having your own business, because being pregnant and having a baby kind of disrupts your life. It might just be temporary or, it might be forever because you have to carry this baby and then they come out and then you have to, nurse it and wake up in the middle of the night and all of these things. And being an entrepreneur, how did that impact your business, or did you have a baby and then have a different view of the world? Did it change you at all?
I mean, I always knew that I wanted to have children. I actually didn't know that I wanted to have a career. I knew that I wanted to have children. The career thing is a complete and utter surprise to me. But so you just kind of do it, It's hard to sort of explain, but you just kind of roll with the punches. You don't really know what to expect, and you don't know how you're ever going to afford any of it living in New York City and having to pay for schools and babysitters. And it's all, if you think about it too much, it's all way too overwhelming. And so I think that the way I did it was it just played day by day and didn't really make any plans about what we were going to do or how we were going to do it. And we just kind of let the whole kind of family thing just evolve. And, there are some things in my mind you just can't plan for. And that for me, it worked that starting my business at the same time as having a baby, it was a completely new thing. So the baby thing was a new thing. The family thing was a new thing. The job thing was a new thing. So I didn't have sort of this idea of work pre-baby was like this, and now post-baby it's like this, because it was just almost in many ways we were starting this whole new adventure from scratch, and so everything was new, and I could not think of going back to work with a baby. That to me was, I couldn't even imagine it. I couldn't imagine getting a babysitter to take care of my kid and then go, or putting it in nursery, I don't know, whatever you do. I didn't think of it as an option. And so those first 5 years, because Mia was born first and then Saskia was born 2 years later. And I remember after I had Saskia, I was at my desk the very next morning. I was back at my desk again. I took not a day off.
I hear you, sister. I had my laptop in the hospital room with me the next day.
And then I think that 3 months later, I sort of must have had a sort of, breakdown of some kind, because I think it was all too much. I had no employees at that time. I was trying to run my business, and, there was a hell of a lot going on. Jaime has always been an extremely involved parent, and he's sort of in the last probably 6 years or so, he's sort of the main caregiver at home, and he runs the household and that sort of thing now. But the first 5 years, I was really doing a lot, and it was tough. It was really hard, and I managed, and I, tracked through it. And at the time, I didn't quite realize how hard it all was, because you just do it. You know, it's not like you have nobody's saying to you, well, what would you like to do today? Would you like to run your business and take care of 2 children, or would you prefer? No, you just have to do it. So you bloody do it. And so, you know, I don't really feel like there were a lot of choices then. We just did it. I was just trying to grow my business, and I always felt so passionate about design that, like you said, Jamie, you know, that you said, like, it's what you do. It's just an extension of yourself. And that's always what it's been like for me, for my business. It's been stuff that I've really, really, really felt passionate about. So it's just keeping that thing running, you know?
Mm-hmm. Have you ever experienced any misogyny or chauvinism or anything in dealing with clients or in business relationships or anything like that?
Very, very, very little.
That's great.
Oh, that's a relief. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, no, very little. I love sitting with a table of men and being the only woman there. I am not intimidated, and I will not let a man intimidate me because he's a man. Never, ever. I mean, to be fair, I also haven't worked in many corporate situations. And if I ever have had situations like that, it's been more in a sort of corporate environment where I've felt that frustration, and it's occurred to me that some women have to deal with this every day. So I'm not saying that I've never seen it, but I realize it's there because I've seen glimpses of it. But I'm very happy to say that in my world, I've been lucky that it hasn't often been something that's held me back in any way.
That's great. All right, just to switch to a happier subject, I heard you're working on a dance studio, and I just wanted to know, are you a good dancer?
Am I a good dancer? I can dance for sure.
What kind of dance?
But I'm good is not that. I love dancing, but not like organized dance. You know, not where I have to learn the steps and remember it. Although I did take many dance classes at the same dance studio. A whole bunch of moms would take dance classes, and it was fun. No, I love dancing. I mean, but my kids are dancers, so they've been a part of this dance studio for a long time. I like to do anything that's fun.
I want to hang out with you.
I know.
The dance studio is great because, you know, this is a friend of mine who started her business, who came from Australia, had a dance studio in Australia, and she was one of the moms at the school, and we became really good friends, and she opened a tiny studio, and now the studio, it's called Downtown Dance Factory, is a huge downtown dance place for young dancers, and I've just seen the business grow, and we did our first design, and then we did an edition, and now we're doing another edition, and it's great. They sort of give me freedom to design what I think would be good in there. And so they're great to work with. I love them. And I've actually done, there's a partners, 2 women who own the business, and I've done both their homes as well. So, you know, they know me very well, and it's a very fun project.
You've mentioned fun a lot and happiness. You want your spaces to make people feel happy. And so I have kind of a deep existential question for you, which is, what is truly important to you? Is it those 2 things, happiness and fun, or is there something else that really, when you strip everything down, is your motivation?
I honestly do think that happiness is the number one thing. But then also, you know, I've gotten a bit older and, dare I say, wiser and less wild. And I think that also, you know, being stable emotionally is huge. I mean, you can jump around and be a crazy person, but it's like when you're winding down, you know, are you comfortable with yourself? Are you happy with yourself? Are you at peace?
Contentment.
I think I must be getting older. I definitely am getting older. That was such a wise thing for me to say.
It really was. If you're getting older, you know, you're probably thinking about the end of your life. What do you hope to accomplish before you kick the bucket?
You know, this is one thing that I do know. That I have had times where I've thought, oh, I'm going to do this and this and this. Things have happened to me that if you had told me, like, some of the things that have happened to me, some of the amazing connections or the people I've met or the experiences I've had or the adventures I've been on, I wouldn't have even been able to think that up in my wildest dreams. I have given up a long time ago on trying to figure out what my next adventure is going to be, or, you know, where I'm going to go, or what I'm going to do. I don't know. I just leave it up to chance, and that's been kind of amazing.
Yeah, it sounds like that's working out really well for you. I'm gonna take a note on how you live life, Ghislaine.
Yeah, I am too.
Takes very, very little planning.
I'm
like an obsessive planner, so I desperately need to, whatever it is you've got, I need to rub a little bit of it on me.
I'll bottle it and send it.
Right, you should bottle it and sell it.
I'm in. I want stock in that company. So I was going to ask you, what's next? What are the long-term goals? But, you're not planning for these things. So,
well, no, that's not entirely true. I do have some things that I think would be fun to do.
Okay, let's hear about those.
Okay, so, the whole product thing has been something that we've always done, but then just got a couple of years ago, we sort of thought, oh, well, let's just do this in a more formal way. And we, started doing our papers for Flavor Paper. And then Brad Ascalon and I worked on a line of furniture for Lowell, which was an amazing experience and so much fun. And I love the guys at Lowell, Greg and Nate. They were such a pleasure to work with. And I love my collaboration with Brad Ascalon. And so I just think that that's definitely more of what I want to do. HBF Textiles has just asked me to work on their line for 2018. So I'm super excited to do that.
Awesome.
And I love that I've never done anything like that before, so that's a whole new adventure for me. And I love that it's completely new, brand new. I don't know very much about textile. I mean, apart from that, I work with them every day, but the whole process is something that's new for me. And so I'm excited about that. And then, I'm looking at one of my inspiration boards right now. We're going to design a line of lighting.
Oh.
So I'm considering materials and ceramics and all kinds of things for that.
Is that partnering with a manufacturer? Are you going to release that under your own brand?
No, I will partner with a manufacturer. I'm not really interested in having anything manufactured on my own brand, at least not at this point in my life. I kind of like designing it, and then, collaborations are like, I love that. I like doing what I do, but then partnering with people who do what they do and do it well. And then we have a rug line that we're working on that we're pretty excited about, but we're just in the beginning phases of that. So that's sort of, I'm loving that we're doing more offices. We just finished an office space that got published in Interior Design magazine this month for a South African advertising company called Barrow. And that was amazing for me and so great to be partnering with a South African company where everybody had the same accent as me. And it felt like being home in so many ways. That's something that I feel super excited about. And I love that, I control that in so many ways, because often you have to wait for clients to bring a project to you. And then I like that I can come up with something and I can develop it in my own time and figure out how I can partner with people to make these designs a reality. So that's fun. It's like taking the reins a little bit more. And but it's a good thing to do while my team is working on projects as well, because I work on the design of all my projects, and I'm very involved in every single decision that happens, anything that gets picked, but I'm not at all involved in the day-to-day of making these projects happen, the logistics of it all. I have fantastic designers who work for me and make these projects happen.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so lucky in that way because I have very, very short attention span, and I get bored very quickly. And I'm not good at details. And it takes being, an older person, not that old, 48, but it takes.
Not old.
But if I was 30, I probably couldn't have told you so easily what I suck at. And now I'm really comfortable with talking about what I'm really awful at. But then I'll also tell you quite comfortably what I'm brilliant at.
Yes.
But so that's freed up a lot of time because I have this incredible crew that that makes these projects happen and are super organized and super on top of things. So then it also opens up my time a bit and my creative energy to work on projects that I think are interesting.
That's exciting.
Maybe you want to tell us a little bit about one project coming out that you really want our listeners to pay attention to. I don't know if it's the most recent Flavor Paper launch.
Flavor Paper launch was very, very exciting, I think, because, that project started out, it's two papers that we sort of launched at very similar times, and they're both inspired by the trip that we took back to South Africa. Also, at the time, I was working for the South African company, which even made it more real that we wanted to do something that was inspired by where I grew up in Durban. And one of them is called Wild Thing, and it is these gigantic tropical leaves that my husband photographed, ironically, in the botanical garden, Brooklyn Botanical Gardens. So he went and he photographed them there, and then they're this sort of gray, this like tropical graphic leaf pattern, and it's huge. I mean, you can scale it down to anything you want, but it has a minty background or pink background.
I love the scale of it. It just makes you feel dwarfed, like you're in a jungle.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's one thing that I always love to play with on my project is scale is so important to me. I tend to do things really big. And so one of the other prints that we did is called Shwe Shwe. And Shwe Shwe is a print that is commonly found on fabrics in South Africa, but it's tiny, tiny, tiny. And what we did is we reinterpreted it and then blew it up. It's this gigantic circular pattern, and it's very, very bold and very bright. And we actually just won an award during ICFF. I was happy to get that award.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, where can our listeners find your website and your social media handles?
gvinteriors.com is my website, and gv_interiors. You can find me on Instagram at that. And then Facebook is also GV Interiors.
It's fun to follow you. You always have really beautiful photos to share.
Oh, good. I actually love doing Instagram. It's so fun. I really, really like doing it. It's quick and it's easy, and it's very gratifying.
Well, thank you so much for talking to us and for sharing your life story and your work philosophy and your fearlessness. Really means a lot to us.
It's been so fun talking to you. We need to do this with martinis next time or something, right?
Oh, we've been talking about that. We're like, we really need to have a drink.
Yeah.
Well, this was almost as good as a drink.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. That was so much fun.
She sounds like somebody I would love to be best friends with.
I just want to hang out with her.
I love her work. It does make you happy. I love that that's part of her motivation, because I think what is the biggest gift you can give somebody else other than making them feel good?
Yeah.
That's huge.
Seriously. And I love that that's her philosophy. And I appreciate her honesty in saying, it was happiness, and now, it's more along the lines of a contentment form of happiness where you feel secure and comfortable with who you are and your place in the world and all of those things. And I love that she said that, because I think as you get older, you start looking at life like that.
Yes, and you start editing out the drama wherever you can, because it's no longer about being whipped around solving problems. Yeah.
Yeah, like what's important to you is different.
Mm-hmm. You know what I thought was really interesting too is she talks about being overconfident in many areas and being fearless. And I actually thought it was very fearless of her to admit that she's also very insecure about some things. And I really appreciated that she shared that with us. I think it takes a lot of courage to be vulnerable. And but vulnerability is what really helps you understand the other person as a human you can relate to. And so when she shares with us her fallibility, I feel more connected to her, and I feel more connected to her work, and I feel like her work even just got layers and layers deeper when I understood that she really wants to be liked. And that's such a human thing. I don't think any of us really at our core don't care about being liked.
I think most people care about being liked. Yeah. And I think that it's a huge fear for most people to not be liked, and whether or not that's like, a selfish reason to be upset that you hurt somebody's feelings. It's still a very honest thing for her to say that not a lot of people would come out and reveal.
Well, it's very self-aware too. And I think that self-awareness lends a real depth and authenticity to a person's design practice, because that self-awareness helps you also pick up key personality traits in other people. And when she's talking about weaving people's personalities into their own spaces, then of course you're going to feel happy and content and at home in a space that truly reflects you. Go Ghislaine.
Yeah, whatever she's got, she needs to bottle that up immediately.
I'm buying it.
And sell it.
I'm going to spritz it on myself.
Spritz it, rub it, whatever I have to do, roll around in it, but I need some of it.
Yes. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe to us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, and sign up for our newsletter, read the show notes, and see images of Ghislaine's work over at our website, cleverpodcast.com.
And you can connect with us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Clever Podcast. We love hearing from you, and we love to read every single comment. As always, this episode of Clever was edited by Chris Modl of Yore Studio with music by L1011.